Through the first 5 games of the 2025 season, I think for the Philadelphia Eagles, the most disappointing player and the most surprise star have both come from the defensive line. I'll tell you why. Coming up next right here on Locked On Eagles.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
We thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Welcome in, Eagles fans, to this Wednesday edition of the show. We are brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you're going to get $300 back in bonus bets to use across the entire app. 1 day away from Eagles, Giants, Thursday night football. I really think this is going to be the get-right game for the Eagles to get to 5-1 and rebound from that loss to the Denver Broncos last Sunday. The Giants, you look at their wide receiver core, it's like 2019 Eagles banged up, completely decimated. Malik Neighbors out for the year. Darius Slayton is out as well. It's Wan'Dale Robinson and like Jalen Hyatt, and that's about it. Their secondary is not great either. If they just don't let the Giants pass rush wreck this ball game and take over, the Eagles should get a win tomorrow night. If they're going to win this game though as well, their pass rush, they need to get Jackson Dart down to the ground. Without those receivers I was mentioning, Dart is going to have to create outside of structure with his legs to produce at all for the Giants offense. And I think the Eagles' pass rush this year has been pretty consistent with pressures, getting to the quarterback, but getting them down on the ground has been a problem. The Eagles only have 7 sacks so far this year, and a lot of them have come from interior pressure. They've come from Moro Ijoma and Jordan Davis and pressures from Jalen Carter. So they got to get Jackson Dart down on the ground. And when you talk about the Eagles' defensive line, specifically their edge rushers, it's kind of interesting. I was doing a Twitter exercise today and on our YouTube community page. I started up this discussion through 5 games. I posed a question like, who are the most surprising risers and maybe the most disappointing player that maybe you had higher expectations for, you thought was going to break out in 2025, that through at least it's only been 5 games, but through those first 5 games, they're not quite meeting your expectations. And it's funny, when I was doing that, when I was having that conversation and doing that exercise, I actually thought both the most surprising riser or the underrated star of the first 5 games and the most disappointing player for me did come from the edge rusher position. I think right now through 5 games, Josh Uche has been the most pleasant surprise of this football team. And now, of course, you could talk about Moro Ijoma, right, has the 10th highest pass rush win rate among all defensive tackles this year in the NFL. Like, it's tough to see Milton Williams at number 3, but you're not doing much worse, and you're saving a lot of money with Moro Ijoma, who's at number 10, and he leads your team right now with sacks, with 2 on the year. You could talk about him. You could talk about Jahad Campbell, of course, as well. I think we all had pretty high expectations for the rookie this year, but I don't think I expected him to be this good. Like Quenya Mitchell, Cooper DeJean last year, that kind of level of a rookie where right now, through 5 games, he is the betting favorite to win Defensive Rookie of the Year. So Campbell and Ijoma are definitely honorary mentions, but Uche, for me, when you talk about expectations compared to reality from the offseason to the regular season, that's why I'd put Uche ahead of Ijoma and Campbell, because I did expect Ijoma to break out like this. Like, it's not a surprise what he's doing. He did this all of last year as well, with less snaps and a smaller role. Jahad Campbell, while I didn't expect him to be the rookie of the year, I didn't expect him to be like a top 5 coverage linebacker in football through his first 5 games of his pro career. I did expect for a first-round versatile piece on defense with Vic Fangio's track record of turning linebackers into stars like Zach Bond last year. I did expect Campbell to be pretty good this year. Uche, I had no idea what he was going to be. It was a shot-in-the-dark contract with little to no guaranteed money, basically a veteran minimum contract from Howie Roseman this year, a 1-year, we'll see what happens kind of deal. It's not totally shocking because he is a former second-round pick that has had a double-digit sack season, but that was all the way back in 2022 with New England. Last year, he was kind of the Kansas City Chiefs version of Bryce Huff, where he just did not fit that scheme. he was not producing, and he was a healthy scratch for the Super Bowl. So this year, and it was kind of a quiet preseason, and it sounded like he had a good summer, but I didn't think he was going to be a star. I didn't think he was going to lead the Eagles in pass rush win rate for edge rushers. And actually, for the first 2 games of the season, he led the entire position across the entire league in pass rush win rate. So the fact that he's doing that, and not just that, but Uche's been very underrated this year against the run. I thought maybe Uche would be like a good fastball off the edge as a 3rd or 4th man of the rotation that's only used in like obvious pass rushing situations, the way probably Bryce Huff should have been used last year and the way he's being used right now with San Francisco. But Uche's actually been a guy that you can rely on in all 3 downs. Like, you can trust him in obvious running situations too. I think he's been very solid against the run. And he's consistently getting to the quarterback. He doesn't have a sack yet this year, but I've been very impressed with Uche. So they need him tomorrow night to get to Jackson Dart and get him down on the ground as they are still waiting for Nolan Smith to get healthy. Jalyx Hunt has kind of been the disappointing player for me through 5 games. So that's also why they need Uche to continue this trajectory that he's on this year and having a rebound season. Same with Zadarius Smith, and Azeez Ojulari had a really good first game of the season. He's been a healthy scratch all year, but I thought he was really impressive against the Denver Broncos. So they need those guys because, like I was saying, my most disappointing player is also on the edge, and it's Jalyx Hunt. Like, has he been horrible this year? Has he been a complete bust? No, not at all. But, and this is kind of what you should have expected from Jalyx Hunt through two seasons, through 1 season and 5 games, and into year 2 as a former 3rd round pick that we all knew was going to be a multi-year project player that's still pretty new to this position. Honestly, what you're getting from Jalyx Hunt right now is probably what you should have expected from the start. But I think we all did see how good he was down the stretch last year, especially in the playoffs against LA, the Super Bowl. Like, he was really good as well in the NFC Championship. And the Eagles kind of showed that they expected him to break out this year by letting Josh Sweat walk, by Brandon Graham retiring and them not really doing anything significant at this spot. They brought in 2 cheap contract veterans in Ojulari and Uche. The Eagles were also telling us with their actions that they thought Hunt was going to be more ready in year 2 than maybe we should have expected or originally expected. That can still be the case. I still believe in Jalyx Hunt this year. I think he's been pretty solid. Nolan Smith also had a quiet start to his year 2 in 2024 through the first 4 games. Nolan Smith did not have a sack, and then he had, 10.5 down the stretch, including 4 in the playoffs. So the breakout could still happen this year. But I will say, because of the playoff run last year, again, it's comparatively speaking, because of the playoffs last year and the run that Jalyx had, because the Eagles' actions showed they expected him to really take that next step as the number 2 to Nolan Smith in the rotation, I was expecting more at this point. But maybe we should have expected what we're getting from Jalyx. And I do think as the season goes on, again, this kid is so young. He is so physically gifted, but he's very new to this position still. And he's playing a lot of snaps. So they're putting a lot on his plate. I think as the year goes on, he will improve. And I thought against Denver, he had a pretty solid performance. He almost had a sack in a big spot in the second half. He was close to getting a strip sack in the first game against Dallas. So he's made some plays. He's been solid against the run. But I will say, I was expecting more at this point. So no matter what happens Thursday night, I think getting to Jackson Dart is going to be a key in winning this football game. So they need Uche to continue what he's doing. And Jalyx Hunt, I think, has to be better. Because the Eagles, it might not be fair to him, but they need him to be better. Because Uche, I don't think still, even with as good as he's been this year, is a top 2 guy in your rotation. Zadarius Smith also has 2 sacks in his first 4 games with the Eagles, but he's an older player that you probably want on a pitch count here. And with Nolan Smith out, it's on Jalyx, so they need more than what they're getting from number 58. All right, guys, coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast, I'm going to tell you why it is very, very important for the long term that Kevin Patullo gets better this year. And I'll tell you why coming up right here on Locked On Eagles. Today's episode of the Locked On Eagles podcast, we are brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook, and the NFL season is here. FanDuel has an offer that you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 back in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you're going to unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the entire app. And I love FanDuel. They give you so many ways to play, building parlays, trying player props, and even following the live lines during games. It makes watching football even more exciting when you've got a little something riding on the action. Whether you're a casual fan or love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. So what are you waiting for? Just take an anytime Jalen Hurts rushing touchdown. Win some money. Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and to get started. All right, Eagles fans, thanks so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Obviously, Kevin Patullo being better this year is so important. If the Eagles want to win a Super Bowl, like, he cannot have this few answers in the second half when a defense adjusts. He cannot have this vanilla and predictable scheme that still, even though it's not complicated, they barely get the snap off before the play clock hits 5. The play clock hits 3, 2, 1. They're barely getting plays off. They're slow. You know, they've been saying it for 2 weeks now. Jordan Mailata said it. Jalen Hurts has said it. For 2 weeks, like, they are slow to get out of the huddle, to get to the line of scrimmage. A lot of that's on Kevin Patullo. When things work, he doesn't go back to it. His reasoning for things has been brutal. Like, I'm sorry, I'm not writing him off already, but I cannot listen to his press conferences. Like, they are brutal. There is no logic to what he's saying, and it's making me have very little faith in him rebounding this year. It's giving me Press Taylor vibes or Mike Groh. It's giving me even like when Jonathan Gannon used to talk, like that kind of energy. And the vibes are not high with Kevin Patullo, but it does need to work because without him, at least improving, like Kellen Moore did last year, figuring out this scheme with this personnel at the right time, it's going to be really difficult to win a Super Bowl if you're winning in spite of your coaches, if you're winning in spite of your scheme. Even with as talented as the Eagles' offensive personnel is, you got to win at least with your coaching, maybe not because of them, but you got to at least win with them. It's also very important that Kevin Patullo works out for the long term too. For this current core to stay intact, if we want to avoid history repeating itself and past drama that led to coaches getting fired and feuds inside of the building of the NovaCare complex, if we want to make sure that it all is kumbaya and this team can consistently run it back and compete for championships, and you don't have to see a lot of change again like you did after the Eagles won Super Bowl 52. And that already happens a lot with coaches. But if we want at least like the top pillars intact, Nick Sirianni, Jalen Hurts, this Howie Roseman, Sirianni, Hurts era, I do think Patullo, like him succeeding, is very important in keeping things consistent and steady and not having change. Because when you look at history, Howie Roseman and Jeffrey Lurie have had more say. They've been more hands-on with a coach's staff than I think you would be used to seeing across the NFL. Why? Well, I think naturally Howie Roseman and Jeffrey Lurie just have a lot of power and demand that they're hands-on in a lot of different operations with within their organization. But also, the kind of coaches that they bring in tend to be young, inexperienced, don't have a lot of connections, right? I think, Howie Roseman was really crucial in helping Doug Peterson land Jim Schwartz as his defensive coordinator. I think the same goes with Vic Fangio being Nick Sirianni's defensive coordinator. Same goes with Kellen Moore last year being the offensive coordinator. So when these new young head coaches come in, they tend to be okay with the power structure, the dynamic of Howie Roseman and Jeffrey Lurie kind of being a little more hands-on with what should normally be exclusively coaching matters than probably other coaches would be. Chip Kelly was not okay with it, and that's why we had the feud of 2015. But as the years go on and that coach becomes more of a veteran, there's more success, their resume builds up into a pretty impressive one. They win and compete for championships like Doug Peterson did, like Nick Sirianni has. If their coaching staff decisions don't work out and Howie and Lurie want say, and they kind of want to take that over again, Doug Peterson was not cool with that in 2020. Jeffrey Lurie's like, okay, well then what is your plan moving forward? Doug said, I'm going to continue to promote from within. He's a loyal guy to his staff. And Lurie said, nope, you're fired. We're out. We don't trust that plan. We're bringing in Nick Sirianni. I'm very curious of a similar, and again, this is getting too ahead of myself right now. I know that, but it's part of why I need Patullo to produce right now and to improve, because you could see this happening down the road where maybe Howie Roseman and Jeffrey Lurie want to change things and they want to bring in an outside hire, which I'm honestly surprised looking at the history of this team and the lack of success they've had with internal promotions, i.e. Mike Groh and Brian Johnson. I'm surprised that they didn't interview like Kubiak or some other guys outside of the organization instead of just promoting Patullo, but that's what they did and it's not working. Would in the offseason Howie and Lurie say, if it just doesn't work and this team doesn't make it far in the playoffs, like, hey, we want you, Nick Sirianni, to fire Kevin Patullo. We want you to go out there and bring in an outside hire like we did Kellen Moore. And is Nick Sirianni going to be okay with that if that happens? Now that he's won a Super Bowl, now that he has more leverage, more power, is he going to be okay with that kind of dynamic if it happens? Would he fire Kevin Patullo in any scenario at the end of this year, even if Patullo continues to be as bad as he is right now, and he's such a Jekyll and Hyde play caller that just has no answers in the second half, and this continues, like, would Sirianni in any scenario like that move on from Patullo, who's been his guy since 2021? It feels very similar to this bond that Doug Peterson had with Press Taylor, and it cost Doug 2 jobs. It cost him his job in Philadelphia and in Jacksonville. He refused to get rid of Press Taylor. It played a part in the Eagles firing Doug, and it played a part in the Jaguars firing Doug. I wonder if Patullo is Nick Sirianni's Press Taylor. And we'll see. Again, hopefully that we never even get there. The offense turns things around. They become more consistent. They make a deep playoff run, and Patullo is the guy next year, and they finally have a play caller in back-to-back years that's the same voice for Jalen Hurts, and it's in a positive way. But if we're on the trajectory that we're on, and it stays that way, Howie and Lurie are going to want to change, at least in my opinion. And I wonder if they want control or they want say, and they have a certain vision for Nick and what to do, and Nick's vision is different. Like, is history going to repeat itself? That's the issue when you, again, as good as Nick Sirianni is as a head coach, and he has his elite strengths that I've defended now over the last year, since last year when I called for his job after the Tampa loss. Since then, like, I've admitted where I was wrong about Nick, and play calling isn't the end all be all for what makes a head coach great, but these kinds of scenarios, these situations are more common in a place like Philadelphia when you have a head coach that does not call plays. You're either going to have a really good play caller that gets a head coaching job and moves on, or you're going to have a guy that isn't good enough and they move on from him, like Brian Johnson in 2023, bringing in Kellen Moore. So it leads to this team being more likely to have these kind of run-in situations than other football teams. So it's very important Patullo does work out, because I could see that kind of conflict coming in the future, unless Sirianni's built different and, he would be willing to move on from Patullo, and, he's very willing to do whatever it takes, whatever, Howie and Lurie see fit for this organization. Like, maybe he's not Doug Peterson, but I don't know. I think a Super Bowl winning head coach wants to pick his staff, and a guy like Sirianni that's extremely loyal and has been with Patullo since he started here probably will not move on from him. And that was very similar to the relationships that Doug Peterson had with Press Taylor. So I don't know. It's a long-term thing, but it's part of why I'm like really rooting for this to work out right now, because I don't want to see that kind of history repeat itself. So obviously Patullo being good at calling plays and being more prepared on game days, breaking things out of the huddle, getting snaps off quicker, being more diverse and creative is so crucial to winning a championship this year. But for the long term, like for this era of Eagles football to stay what it is, like I think he's got to work out, because I don't know. I think we'd be at a crossroads if it doesn't, between Nick and the top of the organization. So we'll see. Let me know what you think. Hit us up on X at DiBiase LOE and at Locked On Birds. Coming up next, LOE3 presented by FanDuel. Eagles Giants player prop bets to take tomorrow on Thursday Night Football.
I'm Cody Rourke from Locked On Broncos, and this episode is brought to you by Peloton. Peloton is shaping the future of fitness with the brand new Peloton Cross-Training Tread Plus, powered by Peloton IQ. This is Peloton's most advanced equipment yet, giving you real-time guidance and endless ways to move, whether you're running, lifting, or you're cross-training with your favorite instructors like Alex Toussaint. It's training reimagined to make your workout more personal. Peloton is built for breakthroughs. With features that help you plan, stay motivated, and hit peak performance, you can let yourself run, lift, flex, and go while Peloton handles all the rest. Plus, Peloton IQ provides real-time strength coaching, tracking your progress and suggesting weights that challenge you so you can get stronger. Plus, the new movement tracking camera, it counts your reps and corrects your form in real time, making sure every rep is safer and smarter. So, let yourself run, lift, flex, push, and go. Explore the new Peloton Cross-Training Tread Plus at onepeloton.com.
All right, Eagles fans, time to get you ready for Eagles Giants with LOE3 presented by FanDuel. 3-player prop bets to take for Eagles Giants. I told you I was going to get back on track last week, and I did just that. I went 2-1. So I did lose the Jalen Hurts anytime rushing touchdown bet, which is kind of crazy. That was the one I'm like, I just need a win this week. Let's get this one. That one didn't pan out, but A.J. Brown over 4.5 receptions hit. Devontae Smith over 48.5 receiving yards hit. Devontae was incredible in that game. He had over 100 yards. Some deep plays down the field. Should have had more. Could have had the game-winning catch twice if it wasn't for a penalty. And then the Hail Mary, he got drilled by A.J. Brown and tackled from behind, basically. I know Brown was just trying to get the ball, but Devontae had a chance at that. So Devontae won me that bet. A.J. Brown hit the over on total receptions. I lost the Jalen Hurts anytime rushing touchdown bet, but 2-1 is a lot better than 0-3. And that was the reality week after week betting on this Eagles offense. Although I did go 2-1 a couple weeks ago as well. So I'm 4-5 still the last 3 weeks. So I'm still a losing record, but we're getting better. We're 4-11 on the year. But as the Eagles offense improves, so too will these bets. We went 2-1 last week. Hopefully we'll get to 2-1 or 3-0 tomorrow against the Giants. And my 3-player prop bets that I'm going to take, when you look at the Giants secondary, it's not good. What is the strength of New York's defense? It's that front seven, specifically their defensive line. You got Brian Burns, you got Kayvon Thibodeau, you've got Abdul Carter, you've got Dexter Lawrence, you've got Darius Alexander, who I really liked coming out of Toledo. Like, that's a really good defensive line, but the secondary in New York, and I'll talk about it tomorrow with Patricia Traina of Locked On Giants, it's brutal over there. So I think the Eagles passing game is going to have the success it did in the first half against the Denver Broncos, the first half against Tampa Bay. Will it last through 4 quarters? I'm not banking on that, but I think they'll have enough success against just a very lackluster, not talented Giants secondary where some of these numbers that FanDuel is listing will hit. Like for me, I'm going to take the over on A.J. Brown's receiving yard total. I think he's going to dominate in this football game. His over-under right now is at 64.5. I think he hits that. I think A.J. Brown has over 100 yards in this football game. He met with Saquon and Jalen the other night. Hopefully, with that and the added chances Jalen gave him against Denver, they're going to be on the same page. If he just catches that, if he doesn't stop running on that deep ball against the Broncos, Brown has over 100 yards and a touchdown last week. So I think he'll hit on that this week against the New York Giants in a get-right game. So that'll be my first bet, the over on A.J. Brown's receiving yard total, which is 64.5. That's currently at minus 114. I'm going to hit the Dallas Goedert anytime receiving touchdown bet because that has been a pretty consistent one that you could go to this year and win some money. Dallas Goedert already has 4 receiving touchdowns on the year. Quietly, Kevin Patullo, one thing Patullo's done really well this year is call plays in the red zone, and not just the tush push, but the passing game, the concepts, the scheme in the red zone has been really good. And Dallas Goedert quietly has been a red zone monster for Kevin Patullo. He has 4 receiving touchdowns this year already. I think Jalen Hurts really looks to him inside the 20 with his size, his ability to make contested catches. I think they're going to continue to use RPO like they did last week. They use that heavily, and they were really going to Dallas Goedert in those plays. I think Goddard's going to score a touchdown against the Giants, and that's currently at plus 250. And then my other bet, Saquon Barkley facing his old team. Obviously, this isn't the revenge game. That was last week or last year. But kind of like Deshaun Jackson when he played the Eagles, when he was in Washington and Tampa Bay, anytime you play your former team that you feel like did you wrong, normally you're going to produce. And Deshaun used to kick the Eagles, every single year they played him. Saquon's total rushing and receiving yard line at minus 114 is at 107.5 yards combined rushing and receiving. I'm going to take the over on that. I think Saquon finally has a good rushing game. I'm not going to say he's going to have 120 to 50 yards like he did consistently last year, but I think he'll have close, he'll be in that 70 to 100 range. And Saquon caught the wheel route for a touchdown last week. It's embarrassing, by the way, that was not in the playbook, that Hurts had to draw that up based on what he saw. Not a good look for Kevin Patullo, but Jalen's been looking to Saquon more in the receiving game this year, the check down game. Now you got a deep shot. Hopefully Patullo wants to use that more and get Saquon lined up with linebackers one-on-one in space. Hopefully they use more pre-snap motion to get him those mismatches like they did last week against Alex Singleton, who we know in Philadelphia is not a great coverage linebacker by any means. So I think Saquon against a Giants second and third level, that is not great. I think he'll have over 107.5 total yards combined for rushing and receiving. You can bet all of this on FanDuel. Visit FanDuel.com and download the FanDuel app today. That's going to do it for today's edition of Locked On Eagles. Thank you so much for making us your first listen each and every day. Tomorrow, I'm joined by Patricia Traina of Locked On Giants for Crossover Thursday. One more show to get you ready for Eagles, Giants tomorrow night on Thursday Night Football. Until then, though, thank you so much for making us your first listen each and every day. Make sure your second listen is the Locked On NFL podcast with Tyler Rowland and he's the madman. And then, of course, you got the barber, Tony Wiggins, 2 shows a day on Locked On NFL. Make that your second listen of the day. As always, thanks so much for downloading, watching, and listening, and let's go Birds. Fly, Eagles, fly.